Hello viewers, my name is Kunal and welcome to my YouTube channel Dimodia.
My friend Pophan is here with me, and together we are bringing you this awesome YouTube series about Blender 3D. So my friend Pophan will be here with you for the rest of the video, and now I will let Pophan take over.
My channel is dedicated to everything related to 2D and 3D. My channel will include 3D modeling, 3D design, 3D animation, 2D design, programming and more. All my tutorials will be useful for beginners and for intermediate to advanced level users as well, so stay tuned to my channel for exciting stuff. Now, this is a tutorial series about Blender 3D modeling software and it is for beginners to advanced users. I have divided this tutorial series into two parts. In part 1 of this tutorial series, I'll introduce you to the modeling tools in Blender, teach you how to do 3D modeling and create 3D characters. In part 1, you'll also be introduced to all of Blender's basic functionality which is used to do character animation. In part 2, you'll learn real animation using the models and characters you created in part 1. Before I show you how to install Blender today, let's talk about Blender and why you will want to learn it. Blender 3D is a 3D modeling software, but it is not only a 3D modeling software but it is a 3D software collection. Blender is used for making 2D characters, 2D art, 2D animation, 3D models and 3D modeling, 3D characters and animation, 3D art, video editing and so much more. Blender has been used in films for VFX and animation. There are animated movies made entirely using Blender. If we talk about other 3D modeling softwares, they are similar in functionality but they are very costly and only the modeling and designing functionality is provided in a single software. Rendering softwares, video editing softwares will have to be purchased differently and those are very costly. But Blender is free to use, has inbuilt rendering support and it also has awesome animation tools. Blender has been free for so many years now because Blender's founder, Ton Rosendal, wanted it to be free and available to people. Here, I would like to take a moment and say thank you so much to Ton Rosendal for creating Blender and making it available to people. There is a huge community of Blender users from all over the world behind Blender and there is also a community of developers working day and night to improve Blender by adding new functionalities and make Blender awesome. Besides, as Blender's popularity is growing, there is a high demand for 3D modeling using Blender and there are a lot of jobs available on Blender. There is an attractive salary for people doing jobs in 3D modeling and animation. These are the kind of jobs anyone would love to do and would not get bored in a day of office work on the job. Let's see what artists have made using Blender. For that I am typing Blender 3D characters Pinterest in Google. When we open the first link that shows up in Google Chrome, we can see what people from all over the world have made using Blender 3D. We can go back to Chrome and open the second link. Now, we see 3D characters made by an artist from Ukraine. Let's click on the 3D character and the page that opens, shows really good 3D character designs made in Blender. You could model your own superhero character like the one you can see on the screen in Blender. You could make an animation like the animation of the panda on the screen. Making an animation is a satisfying feeling and the journey is a great experience. Many great people have described animation as like that. For example, see the quote on the screen. These should be good reasons for you to start learning Blender 3D. So now, I will show you where to get Blender 3D software. The link is provided in the description. And I will show you how to install Blender 3D software on Windows. Click on the link in the description or type blender.org in any browser window. This will open the Blender website. There is the Download Blender button, click on it to go to the Blender Downloads page. If you use Windows, click on the blue Download Blender 3.2.2 button to download Blender Setup. If you use Mac or Linux, there is the drop-down to select your operating system. Click on the Mac or Linux to download that specific setup file. I am cancelling Blender download as I have already downloaded it before. Blender setup is very simple. After the download is completed, double-click on the setup to start installing Blender. Click on Next button. Tick the I accept the terms in the license agreement to activate the Next button. Click on Next to continue installing Blender. Now you can select the location in your computer where you want to install Blender to. Now, click on Install to complete the Blender installation process. Finally, click on Finish to finish the setup process. Before we start to learn Blender 3D, let's see the difference between 2D and 3D, but Blender can be used for both. So to understand what is 2D, I have a graph on the screen. We all have used the graph system in school days. Recall that, on the graph we used to draw the x-axis and y-axis. The x-axis was drawn left to right, I have shown it in red color here, and the y-axis, which was drawn from top to bottom on the graph paper, I have shown it in blue. The graph was used to plot points on the graph like the points shown here on the graph. The points would have specific position on the x-axis and y-axis. The points would indicate the values of a maths problem of type y equals x square. And we would connect the points to draw the line which would be the answer to the maths problem. This is the 2D coordinate system as there are only two axes on the graph paper. This is the foundation of 2D shapes like circle, square, triangle, etc. 2D shapes are flat shapes and have no depth like a paper. But 3D shapes have depth like shapes of objects that we see in the real life. For example, a cube is 3D, but rectangle is 2D. So now, let's open Blender. When you open Blender, you can see the splash screen. The splash screen has an image on top which shows what can be made with Blender. Then it has options to choose a project file from different project types available in Blender. It also has some important links like the donation link. You should donate to Blender to keep it free forever. Close the splash screen by clicking anywhere besides in the background except on the splash screen. This is the main Blender window. This is how Blender looks and these are the default colors of Blender. Click on Edit and choose Preferences. Click on Navigation to change the orbit and pan method, zoom method, fly and walk method according to your needs. When you open Blender, this is the default look of the Blender software. We can change it according to our needs. Click on Edit, choose Preferences, click on Themes to open the Themes options. Click on Presets to open the Themes list. Blender also supports industry standard keymap for users who have worked on other 3D softwares. Choose Keymap to open Keymap settings. You can change mouse select options and spacebar action. Click on Save Preferences to save the settings. You can reset the settings by clicking on File, then clicking on Defaults and then clicking on Load Factory Settings. If you have used Blender before Blender 2.8, you might be used to the right-click mouse select. You can change the now default left-click select to right-click select in the Inputs tab of the Preferences window. You can also choose to emulate the numpad, by checking the Emulate Numpad checkbox, if your laptop does not have the numpad on its keyboard. Let's see what other themes are available in Blender. Choose Themes from User Preferences to change the default Blender theme. There is a list of themes in the theme settings. Choosing a different theme from the list of themes changes the look of Blender. Let's get you all introduced to the Blender user interface. First of all, when you open Blender, you are welcomed by the splash screen, and the Blender user interface is behind the splash screen. Close the splash screen by clicking anywhere besides in the background except on the splash screen. Blender user interface is divided into windows and workspaces. Windows are also called as editors. Workspaces are pre-defined window layouts which are provided by Blender. When you see the Blender user interface for the first time, the interface seems confusing and even intimidating. Blender has a lot of buttons, icons, and symbols, and when we see those, we might think, there's a storm coming, but Blender is easy to use, once you get familiar with the interface. So, the largest area on your computer screen in the Blender window is called the 3D viewport. The short form is 3D view or view. I have highlighted the 3D viewport in yellow color. Most of our work, almost 80 to 90% of modeling and animation, will be done in the 3D viewport. To the left of the 3D view is the toolbar, which has icons and symbols but no text. I have drawn a red colored rectangle around the toolbar. The toolbar can be shown or kept hidden by pressing T key on the keyboard. Right below the standard menu bar is the Object Selection Modes menu. I have drawn green colored rectangle around the Object Selection Modes menu. To the right of the 3D viewport is the outliner. I have drawn a pink colored rectangle around the outliner. Below the outliner is the Properties window or Properties editor. I have drawn a yellow colored rectangle around the Properties window or Properties editor. At the top of the Blender window is the standard menu bar, which File, Edit, Render, Window and Help menus. I have drawn a pink colored rectangle around the standard menu bar. The Blender 3D viewport is the largest and important editor in Blender window. By default, Blender shows a camera, a light, and a cube in the viewport. It also has a grid and has dark gray background. I am zooming in to show the 3D viewport. Now I am showing the standard menu bar. These are the object selection modes, this is the toolbar, this is the outliner, and this is the timeline. Blender's interface is divided into workspaces and editors. The largest editor or window being the 3D viewport. But, Blender's user interface is highly customizable. You can change window sizes or change the window or editor type directly. If you take your mouse cursor to the border between any two windows, the mouse cursor changes into a double-sided arrow icon. Now, you can make an editor smaller or bigger by just clicking and dragging. I have the outliner and the properties window more broader. Now I am making the 3D view smaller and then making it bigger. I am again making the properties window and the outliner broader or narrower. Let's see the window types available in Blender. Blender has at least 15 editors or windows types. All these window types have different uses and purposes. If you point the mouse pointer at the bottom left of any editor, you can see the editor type. If you click on the editor name, you can see a list of available editors in Blender. These include general editors like 3D View, Image Editor, UV Editor, etc. There are also animation-specific editors like the timeline and programming editors like the text editor. Now I am opening the image editor in place of timeline and making it bigger so that you all can take a good look at it. Now I am opening the UV editor. Now I will show you the compositor. This is the node editor. This is the geometry node editor. This is the shader editor. This is the video sequencer. This is the movie clip editor. This is the dope sheet. This is the graph editor. This is the drivers window. This is the NLA editor. Now I have reopened the timeline. You can combine different window types or you can also split them if the need be. To do this, place your mouse cursor in the space between two windows. The mouse cursor must change to a crosshair icon. Simply drag the mouse to left or right. For example, I am expanding the outliner window such that it will take full space on top of Blender window. Now I can split the outliner window into two outliner windows. Then I can expand the 3D view and combine the 3D view and outliner so that the layout or user interface can be restored to how it was previously. If you place the mouse cursor on the border of any two window types, the mouse cursor changes to double-sided arrow. Now if you right-click, you can choose to split areas or window types horizontally and vertically, or you can choose to join window types or directly swap one window type for another. For example, I am splitting the 3D view to make two 3D views. This trick is useful when modeling and animating. Or if you want to restore the user interface and you do not know how to do it, simply go to File menu and create a new general project. Now I have opened the text editor in place of outliner window. You can save information about your animation in the text editor. This is called as swapping areas. You can swap any window types for any other window type in Blender. It is a good practice to get comfortable with the user interface before starting to learn Blender basics. Finally, we start to learn Blender basics. We will see how to navigate in Blender. Navigating in Blender involves navigating the 3D view using orbiting around, panning and zooming in or out the 3D viewport. Orbiting means rotating the 3D view around. Panning means moving the 3D viewport to left, right, top, or bottom. Press the middle mouse button and drag the mouse to orbit around. Let me turn on the screencast. Press and hold the Shift key and the middle mouse button to pan the viewport. If you press the Alt key and the middle mouse button, the view snaps to the nearest axis, meaning that the view changes from perspective to front orthographic or back or bottom or top orthographic or right or left orthographic view. If you press the Control key and the middle mouse button then drag the mouse towards the screen, you can zoom in, and if you drag the mouse towards yourself you can zoom out. There is an easier way to navigate the 3D view using the viewport gizmos and overlays. We can use the viewport gizmo to orbit around and other icons to pan and zoom. The viewport gizmo is located to the right of the 3D viewport. I have drawn a yellow rectangle around the viewport gizmo and the overlays. The viewport gizmo has red, blue, and green color. The viewport gizmo and overlays can be turned on or off. The symbol to turn these on or off is located at the top of the 3D viewport. To orbit around in the 3D viewport, left-click on the gizmo and drag the mouse to the left or right. Below the gizmo is the magnifier icon. Click on the magnifier icon and drag the mouse away from you to zoom out and drag the mouse towards you to zoom in. You can also use the mouse wheel to zoom in or out. Below the magnifier icon is the hand icon. This icon can be used to pan around in the 3D viewport. Click on the hand icon and drag the mouse to pan around. By the way, if you end up navigating too far in the 3D viewport, press the home key to focus on all the objects in the 3D viewport. The numpad on the keyboard can also be used to navigate in Blender. We can use the 4, 6, 2, and 8 keys to orbit around. And we can press and hold the Shift key with these keys to pan around. Below the gizmo is the magnifier icon. Click on the magnifier icon and drag the mouse away from you to zoom out and drag the mouse towards you to zoom in. You can also use the mouse wheel to zoom in or out. Below the magnifier icon is the hand icon. This icon can be used to pan around in the 3D viewport. Click on the hand icon and drag the mouse to pan around. By the way, if you end up navigating too far in the 3D viewport, press the home key to focus on all the objects in the 3D viewport. Below the hand icon are the camera icon and the grid icon. We will come back to these in later videos. Now let's talk about selecting objects. When we open Blender, we see 3 objects in the viewport. And out of those, the cube is selected by default. Let's deselect the cube. To deselect any number of objects in Blender, press Alt+A or click on the grid in the 3D viewport. To select any object in the viewport, click on the object with the left mouse button. Whichever object is selected in Blender has an orange color border. Also, the selected object is highlighted with blue background in the outliner. Now, I am selecting camera with left click. To select multiple objects, press the Shift key and then click on the objects you want to select. So select multiple object, Shift plus click. If you want to deselect a single object from multiple selected objects, we can again use Shift plus click. Pressing Shift and clicking on an object from multiple selected objects will deselect it. You can also select multiple objects using outliner. Press Ctrl key and left click on the names of objects in the outliner you want to select, or you can also use Shift plus click in the outliner as well. You can also select multiple objects in Blender using the outliner. Press Ctrl and then click on the names of any number of objects in the outliner to select multiple objects. You can press A key to select all the objects at the same time. Press Alt plus A to deselect all the selected objects. The toolbar can also be used to select or deselect objects within Blender. The toolbar allows to select single or multiple objects in more than one ways, which is very helpful when modeling and animating. The first icon in the toolbar is the arrow icon. The arrow icon is used to select or deselect objects in Blender. Left click on the arrow icon. Now press the left mouse button and draw a rectangle or box around the objects you want to select. This is called as box select. Now I am duplicating the cube. We will talk about duplicating objects in another video. Now I am duplicating the cube one more time. Now let's box select the camera, and two cubes. For that, click on the arrow icon in toolbar, then press the left mouse button, keep the mouse button pressed and draw a box around the objects that you want to select. You can try selecting multiple objects with box select. Press Alt plus A to deselect all. Now, click on the arrow icon in the toolbar and hold the click to see a list of options for selecting objects using toolbar. So now, the list that opens has 4 options of 1. Tweak, 2. Select box also called box select, 3. Select circle also called circle select, 4. Select lasso also called the free select. 1. Tweak, tweak is the default option and it allows for selecting single objects. To select box, we have already seen box select. Three. Select circle is called as circle select. Enabling circle select activates a circle around a mouse cursor. Now keep the left mouse pressed and then move your mouse cursor or pointer on the objects you want to select. If you do not keep the left mouse pressed or release the mouse button, you will have to start over. Use the Shift button to deselect objects with circle select. For select lasso is also called as lasso select or free select. This option allows us to select objects or deselect objects by drawing a free-form curve around the objects. If you want to add more objects to the current selection, press and hold the Shift key and then draw a free-form curve around the objects you want to select. If you want to deselect objects, press and hold the Control key and then draw a lasso around the objects you want to deselect. Now we have already gone over time. This has become a long video. But these concepts were very important. This is more than enough for this video. If you like this video, please consider do like and share the video and subscribe to my channel. Bye bye for now. Do take care of yourselves and I will see you in the next video.